Hey everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. I am back from my travels back home to Ohio to settle out my mom's estate. Everything is finished now. I feel really good about how everything turned out, and although I'm pretty tired, I am so happy to be back in the garden. The first thing that I did yesterday when I got back was run out to the garden just to see what has started blooming and what's ready to be harvested and what the gopher has eaten in my absence. And it was so much fun and so exciting to see everything. It's funny how when you're here every day and you look at your garden, you don't realize how quickly things grow from day to day. But when you take a break for a week or so and you come back, it is amazing the amount of growth that has happened in just a few days. We were actually supposed to fly back on Monday, but our flight was canceled due to severe thunderstorms all across the Midwest. So we had to stay an extra night and then fly back in the morning. It was actually 9 days, not 8 as I had planned, that I was away from the garden. And in that amount of time, I can't believe how much has changed. These bachelor buttons are covered in seed heads that I need to harvest, that I have seeds for next year. My potatoes look like they are about ready to go. I harvested a bunch of onions today too, so that I can use those this week in my kitchen. The chamomile has gone crazy. I'm gonna have to pick all of that. And finally, my little old-fashioned poppies that Baker Creek sent me as a free seed packet in my last order, they have finally started blooming, and I want to show you those because I'm really excited about them. I'm also really excited about my hollyhocks. So earlier this spring I discovered one hollyhock plant that had started growing, and I didn't realize it because it was kind of tucked away behind my fig tree, and so this year it got big enough that I actually noticed it. It's a little bit close to the fig tree. I probably wouldn't plant it there normally, but that is where the volunteer decided to plant its roots, so that's where it's going to stay. But since this is its second year, it is blooming. So if you have never grown hollyhocks before, they don't bloom until year 2. So the plant really gets established in year 1, and then in year 2 it starts blooming. And it's a really beautiful red color. So let's go check that out along with that poppy, and then I want to show you some of the onions that I harvested and what I do with those to help preserve them and use the entire plant. Just look at that beautiful little onion bloom. These were onions that just kind of popped up in this bed along with my flowers, and I actually think it looks really pretty with all of the bachelor's buttons. And the bees look like they approve too. They've just been all over it. Let me see if I can get a little closer. I'm loving all of these bachelor's buttons. I think it was called the Jubilee Mix, so it came with several different colors. This kind of lavender color, and these, which are a little bit more purple, and they've got a flatter singular row of petals. Down here you've got the pink, which I think is really pretty, and this classic blue is probably my favorite. It's just really, really pretty. And also this maroon color. These are a little bit spent, but they have a very pretty dark maroon bloom. Just look at that honeywort, y'all. The bees have really been enjoying this, and I have too. I just love the way the little flower heads and the calyxes all coordinate together. They're really pretty. They just bow their little heads. So I'm gonna have to collect some seed from these. There are quite a few that are mixed in with the bachelor's buttons, and I like that combination a lot. I think I'm gonna grow it next year. Here are these poppies. I will put the name of the variety on the screen. They took forever and they grew really tall. They have these cute little flower pods here. They will eventually curl all the way up and point towards the sky, and I'll show you the ones next to it because they're fully opened, and I can't wait for these to open. Just look how big that is. It's as big as my hand, and although this one I think opened yesterday, so it's starting to get a little bit brown in the center already, I just think that's so pretty. It reminds me of a peony, like when I was a kid. Here's one that's probably going to be open tomorrow, 2 of them actually. So I'm really excited to see what they look like fresh. So we are right in the middle of all of my fig trees, and they are getting so big and lush and mature. They have a ton of little tiny baby figs developing on them. So I have high hopes that this year is going to be a really good fig season. They will have 2 crops. They will have one in early summer and then again later in the fall. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I've got 2 varieties here, my Quito Paquito, which I'm always raving about and highly recommend, as well as my Oro Blanco, which does amazing here too. And the gophers seem to leave both of those alone. So hopefully this year I can get a lot of figs. I'm hoping to be able to dehydrate them and also to make some fig jam so that I can use it on my cheese boards and things later on in the fall and winter, when I am really wishing that I had some fresh fruit to eat from my garden. But I came back here so that I could show you the hollyhock that is peeking out behind this fig. And if you look at the size of this fig, you can understand why I missed it at first. The hollyhock is a similar leaf shape to a fig leaf, so it was just a little bit hard to spot at first, but man, those blooms are so beautiful. They're also about as big as my hand, and they are a really nice kind of fuchsia color, so I'm really loving those. I had scattered some seeds back here a couple years ago, and none of them took, at least I didn't think so, but I think this one is actually one of those seeds that happened to find a little spot under the shade of that fig tree and finally had enough moisture and warmth to decide to pop up and grow. And it was such a surprise this year to find it. Also, I have a Palmer's penstemon over on this other side next to this fig. This is one I had shared about before, but I'm noticing that so many of the blooms are really open, so I wanted to get a nice close-up for you because it's a really beautiful plant, and it has been coming back the last couple of seasons. The carpenter bees have just been all over it this morning, as well as a few native bee species, and the carpenter bees are doing a little something called nectar robbing, and that is where they poke a little hole in the base of the flower, and they will do that for flowers that are too long for them to reach the nectar in the bottom of, because they have shorter tongues. Bumblebees and carpenter bees will do that nectar robbing technique, and so it's kind of cute to watch them do it. They like to come in there and sneak and get that nectar out any way that they can. I've had a little bit of trouble with onions bolting. Our temperatures are so inconsistent in late winter and early spring in southern Arizona that it is really hard to prevent your onions from bolting. I covered them with a little bit of shade cloth and burlap just to try to shelter them from some of the sun during that heat wave that we got early in the spring. And then of course the temperatures went way back down again, and a few of them bolted. Normally I have trouble with the red onions bolting. I've tried several different kinds and I have just not had good luck with red onions, but I've had great luck with a few yellow onions. The Texas Sweet and the yellow Granix have always been just showstoppers for me. I get these huge onion bulbs. Last year I got one that was over 3 pounds, so that was really exciting. I should have made onion rings with that, but I didn't think of it. But they are delicious, they're crisp, they're fresh and sweet. I really, really like them. But I have had a few of my white onions. I tried the white Bermuda this year. A few of them are bolting. Not all of them, but a few. So the ones that are bolting are not going to develop a bulb as well as if they hadn't. And they're also not going to be good for storage. So those are the ones that I will pull as I need them and just eat them fresh or cook with them or whatever in the kitchen. I just don't even plan on storing them. I really try to use the whole plant so that I don't have much waste. So I will cook with the bulb, and then the onion tops I will snip up with my scissors into little rings, and I will put them on dehydrator trays and I will dry them. And once they're completely dry, I put them into mason jars and I put them in my pantry, and I will just use those throughout the season to sprinkle into soups, or if I'm making broth or stock, or if I am making dried beans. I make a lot of dried beans. I just love those. And I will sprinkle a few of my dried garlic cloves and my dried onions into the beans or the soup or the stock, whatever, and they do really well to add that onion flavor. And I find that I can make that onion go further because I can use the bulb for certain things and I can use the tops for certain things. If you like chives on your potatoes, I'm sorry to tell you that the dried onion tops really don't do so well for chives. If you want to dry them and put them on your potato, I just find they're a little bit too tough for my taste. I really like the small actual chives to put on my potatoes. If you grow those, you can dehydrate them and save those for your potatoes and things, or your omelets or whatever. But I am just cooking with the dried onion tops. I noticed that I've got quite a bit of thrip damage on both my leeks and my onion tops. Thrips are like a tiny, tiny little insect that is a sap-sucking insect, and they will leave little mottled or kind of light yellowish stripes on some of your leaves. They're not really going to harm the plant unless you have a huge infestation. Honestly, I just let them do their thing. I don't really worry about it because I don't care if the tops have a little bit of mottling. They taste just as good, and it doesn't cause them to spoil it all. But if you are seeing anything on garlic or your leeks or your onion tops that looks like little kind of yellowish or white striping, or like little dots or pin marks in those, that is thrip damage. That's what you're seeing. So anyway, I just choose to let them be. You can treat if you want to, but honestly, I really don't think it's even worth the effort. So don't worry about that. I'm also noticing that my dill is developing some really beautiful flower heads. I like to leave some of those beautiful flowers for the pollinators. A lot of the little native bees, wasps, and butterflies will get on your dill flowers and your fennel flowers and things like that. They really love those. And then I will let them just go to seed, and once the seed heads are dry and before the birds steal them, I will harvest those, and you can use those either for making your dill pickles, or you can use those for saving to plant those seeds next year in your garden, or you can even cook with dill seed, whatever it is you want to do. So I love doing that. I'm always all about saving seeds so that I can try using them in my garden next year. So that's a great way to minimize your gardening costs. If you have something that is not a hybrid that you want to save seeds for to grow next year, just make sure you try to protect it from the birds or the other animals, and then you can dry those seeds and you can use them the next year. And dill is one of those things. You simply just let it dry on the plant. You don't really have to process it. You can even stick the whole dried flower head in a baggie or a paper bag, and then just grab that flower head the next year and pick some of the seeds off and just put them right into the ground. So it's really not too hard. It doesn't take much processing for that. I was a little bit worried when I came home last night because all of my chamomile had bloomed prolifically while I was gone, and it looked like maybe the plant was starting to set seed because everything was closed up. It was just like little yellow centers, and so I thought, oh no, it's not going to produce any more flowers. But later this morning they all popped open again, and I realized that we're still in business. So I'm going to go get my dehydrator tray. I'm going to be harvesting a ton more of these beautiful chamomile blooms, and I just love these so much. They are so much better than the tea bags that you can get in the store. If you've ever looked at a chamomile tea bag, most of the time it looks like kind of yellowish brown powder, and they're just not as flavorful as fresh chamomile. But if you can harvest and dehydrate chamomile from your garden throughout the summer, early summer here in Tucson, and put those in jars once they're dry, those blooms will rehydrate when you pour hot water on them, and they are still just as good as the ones that you can pick fresh. They have a honey, apple, floral scent to them, and they are just delicious, and they look so beautiful as the flowers rebloom in the hot water in your cup. So I'm going to go get my basket, and I am going to harvest all of this chamomile as much as I can. I have another bed that I have a nice patch of chamomile in, so I'm going to be doing that. Just look at all of this Orlea, y'all. It is like sitting in a cloud, and I know you probably can't hear it, but it sounds like just the hum of bees. I have a book called The Murmur of Bees, and that's exactly what it sounds like. They are just humming and working very busily to try to collect as much pollen as they can, and that's pretty cute. It's both honeybees as well as a lot of native bees on these flowers, and I do love Orlea for that reason. They are a wonderful pollinator plant. They're beautiful. They are very adaptable to dry conditions. So these are growing along the border of this bed, and they are not being irrigated. Any moisture that they get is maybe being wicked over in the soil from the irrigation lines that I have in the center of the bed, but they are not being directly watered. I've also got quite a few volunteer Orlea going all over in the yard. They've just popped up everywhere, and they are really not near irrigation lines at all. So I think that is pretty amazing. but I think that they're probably getting some residual moisture because they are growing nearby irrigation lines. So maybe the soil is wicking some of that moisture over, but just a little bit. And so I think that that's pretty cool. If you are looking to save on your water bill, but you want to try to plant some flowers for yourself or for the pollinators, Orlea would be a really good one for spring, as well as calendula. I did not plant any of this Orlea. It all came up on its own. I had saved some seeds last fall for that, but obviously that was not necessary because these were all self-seeded, and they are actually becoming a little bit invasive in this bed. I think that I am going to wait until the blooms are finished, and then before those green seed pods start to dry and mature, I'm going to be taking my loppers in here and chopping them down because they're starting to encroach on the middle of the bed where I like to grow my garlic and my pumpkins and corn and beans and things like that. So I don't want them to take over the bed next year. So I'm going to try to clear out as much as I can so that that minimizes the risk of them self-seeding for next year. So here is an example. I've got some irrigation around the base of these pomegranate trees, but this Orlea is popping up even in between where there isn't any. So I'm sure they're getting a little residual moisture from the soil wicking the irrigation water, like I said, but honestly, a lot of these are just popping up everywhere. And I don't mind that actually. Over here, I want to show you these. Along with all of the thistles that I have to pull, there's Orlea growing at the base of these grapevines, and I didn't plant any of these, so they're definitely shorter, a little more stunted than the ones that are in this garlic bed right here, but it's pretty amazing that they're even growing as well as they are. Just look at all of that, y'all. It's very pretty, but it's starting to definitely take over this bed, so I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna have to be clearing it out fairly soon. The garlic is almost ready. If you missed it and you're growing garlic this year in your garden and you're wondering about when it's ready, I've got a video on that. I will link it below. Just some signs that will tell you that it is time for your garlic to be harvested. I came back to beautiful clouds of flowers on all of my desert willow trees, and these silly little volunteer sunflowers. They're kind of weird looking actually. Oh, look at that funny little bee. Do you see how it's collecting pollen on its abdomen? That is possibly a leafcutter bee, although it could be a bee fly. Let me see as it comes by. No, it's not. It's a leafcutter bee for sure. That's so cute. I'm really excited that we saw that bee on that sunflower because it gives me an opportunity to talk about bees, which is one of my favorite topics, and also to explain the difference between certain bee types. Other varieties of bees will carry the pollen in pollen baskets, and either they are made of bristly hairs on their back legs or an indentation in their back leg called a corbicula, and they will pack those areas with pollen. That's why you may see them with their little saddlebags of yellow pollen on their back legs. But with certain varieties of bees, like leafcutter bees, they will actually collect the pollen on their abdomen, not on their legs. So that is why I knew that that was a leafcutter bee that was on this volunteer sunflower, because it had its abdomen completely packed with pollen. So that was really cute to see, and I'm so glad that I got to share it with you. I want to briefly mention a couple of other things that I found in the garden when I came back. One is that the watermelons are starting to take off. The cowpeas are really starting to grow, and also my peaches and my apples are starting to look really good. My little grapes, they're doing so well. They're starting to just really set a lot of little grape clusters just all over. Let me see if I can get under here. I don't know if you can see those, but it's just covered in them. Caterpillars on this one. You can see how they kind of strip the leaf tissue. These are pretty small ones. They'll get fairly large, an inch or two long, before they finally drop off and go complete their life cycle elsewhere. But I don't mind this, honestly. I think it's really lovely to be able to host them. Look at this. It is just the ribs of the leaves that are left. They have just been working on these for months. If I were gonna sell these sunflowers, that would be a problem. I probably just would not feed the goldfinches here. But since I'm not, I don't mind it so much. I did notice that there are a few little caterpillars on some of these. Look down here. These are probably the border patch caterpillar. They get on a lot of the plants in the sunflower family. They will shred and eat the leaves, but as long as you don't mind that and you're not selling your sunflowers, they actually make a great host plant, and the border patch butterflies are a really great pollinator. Yeah, I do not like the looks of that at all. Those little birdies are going to have to be stopped because I want to eat these greens myself. I just noticed underneath this plum tree, I had planted some 4 o'clock seeds and they have opened up. It's a bit of a cloudy afternoon here, so I think it's fooling them into thinking it's later in the afternoon. So these 4 o'clocks are actually open at 10 o'clock in the morning. I've got just a bunch of different things underneath here. I had planted some garlic and some daffodil bulbs because I had heard that the gophers don't like those, and I was trying to protect my tree. I had planted some more of these 4 o'clocks, and these little fleabanes just planted themselves. Right now they're still closed. They don't really fully open until afternoon, but I kind of like that wild floral look that happens underneath these trees. I kind of have this going on underneath all of my trees. Look at that. I'm really impressed. A new batch of peas for our salad. And here we are almost into May. That is amazing. These potatoes definitely look like they're getting close. They're starting to yellow and look a little bit sad. Those parsnips, I think I'm gonna harvest those this week. I'm starting to see some of the sunnies that I did plant on purpose popping up here and there in the garden and some of the beds. Here's another one here, along with some of this bachelor button. There's another one over there. They're kind of sharing the bed with some of these onions. I see some little lanterns forming in here, which is pretty exciting. On my very favorite tomatillo, the unique Toma Verde, which is a very sweet, fruity flavor to it. If you don't like the tang or the sourness of other tomatillo varieties, try these. They're really delicious. The peaches are starting to develop a nice orange blush, and the apples are getting bigger. I collected a whole bowl of mulberries from my mulberry tree in the front yard, so those are still going. I was really worried that those were going to be finished by the time I was done and that the ants would have collected all of them, but they didn't, and I had plenty. So I had those with my breakfast this morning, and they were so good, and it looks like they're going to continue for a little while yet, so I'm very excited about that. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, and thank you all so much for the sweet emails and the sweet messages and comments about my mother and just about closing that chapter of life. It really reminded me of how quickly our life goes, and that we spend so much time distracted and stressed and worried, and some of that is not our fault. It is just a product of modern life, but it really caused me to feel like I need to pay attention and to enjoy the simple things, because life is so short and we are surrounded by so much beauty, even when there are hard times. So thank you so much for the messages. I appreciate the support so much. I'm Kara from Arizona. Until next time, happy gardening.